Welcome to the third and final part of our game design chat series. Today I want to talk about things that just bug me, either a little bit or a lot. Here we go. Some games have too many cards. As someone who prefers to sleeve the cards for their games, having to deal with a lot of cards gets very expensive very quickly. Aside from that, it's a matter of time and too much randomness. You know, Firefly, the board game, for example, has 5 job or contract decks, contacts, jeez, um, 5 market decks, and 2 decks for determining how far you're getting when you're traveling through space. It'll either be just clear space, or you might come across an opportunity to stop your ship and get stuff, or you might have to deal with Reavers or the Alliance or whatever. And there's also the misbehaving deck for determining certain skill outcomes and missions which are a lot more lucrative. You have to risk that danger. But yeah, there's a reason why if I ever choose to get the Firefly board game again, I'm just getting the base game and then breaking ammo. Because more than that is just too many cards. Some games just have too many rules. I mean, some games are just, a few rules and it's fine. But others have exceptions and limits and specific scenarios that don't use certain rules and used nowhere else. Some games, due to limited playtesting or emergent gameplay, require errata to fix issues that should have been discovered and dealt with. Looking at you, the house uh, on Haunted Hill or whatever the hell that game was. The original Avalon Hill version had like a massive errata for it. Um, the only game with a gigantic errata that I've ever had it print out. Well, not errata, more like frequently asked questions, because it's only like one paragraph of errata and a lot of questions was a City of Remnants. But anyway, in general, I usually manage well enough in teaching games, but the more I have to sum it up on a sheet of paper or index cards, the less likely I'll be running the game in the future. One game I have not run at all is Squadron Strike. I took one look into the rules, and I would have to dedicate a lot of time and specialize in that game to make it a thing of running it with others. And at this point in my life, not right now. There's also like constant rule changes, like with minis games. It kind of gets on my nerves when they have it one way and then they keep changing how it is, because someone finds a way to break it. Sometimes there's just too much dice and math, especially together. Under most other circumstances, I like dice and I like basic math, but when it goes overboard in a game, it can feel overwhelming when it should just be a smooth experience of a game. For example, Frag, first-person shooter experience in the form of a board game, uses a lot of dice rolling and math. Luck can sway either direction hard and help or hurt you. For example, I believe when you set up your stats, there's like speed, which I think you roll that many dice to determine how much movement you have for the turn. There's defense, which is what you roll when someone attacks you. And then the weapons have like a number of dice from like 2 to 10. You roll that many dice and add them together. And then divide that by whatever their target rolled for their defense. to determine damage. And it's just what I thought. I thought Frag was supposed to be a simple beer and pretzels kind of game, you know, not have all this crazy math. It's part of what drew my attention to, you know, Adrenaline was a game without dice and with more of a simple symbol system of combat resolution. Although uh, that one's odd in its own little way too, but I'd rather go back and play that one. Going from too much to not enough, there's just not enough. I hate it when there's not enough examples of the rules in action. You know, a good way to learn a game is to see it in action, and having examples in the rulebook is a good start. A lack of visuals can make it harder to learn or even lead to confusion. A simple game might be able to get away with not having examples, but not always. But complex games involving combat, especially line of sight, holy crap, line of sight, without examples are going to make things less than 100% clear. Trying to think of a good example. Apocalypse Chaos was supposed to have an example of the way combat and line of sight worked, and apparently those brought over. They forgot. They left it out. You know, Apocalypse Chaos has its own issues, but it's more of a randomness problem for that game. But you know, not having the line of sight example didn't really help as well. Some other games could use, you know, better examples. It's hard to think of some because in a lot of the games I've come across so far have been pretty good about having the right examples. I'll have to dig through my collection and see which ones are really lacking for sure. Also, when there's like not enough components, it can be a problem. A game that relies on tracking things through counters of any kind, like tokens or bills, whatever, should have a little more than enough of them to have a comfortable buffer zone of being able to cash them in to having to cash them in. And then when there isn't even a buffer for a maximum player game, that's just being cheap. Looking at you, Planet Steam and Megacorps, with your lack of money tokens and bills, and City of Remnants with your lack of the reputation tokens. The last copy I had for City of Remnants, I had to add in some tokens of my own for the sheer lack of ones that game really freaking needed. The ultra cheap approach bugs me even more. A tracker on a scale instead of counters. New Angeles with its money tracker, and Clash of Cultures with its resource trackers. And it's like, you know, I'd pay a little more for tokens, man. I really would. Just put in those tokens. I'd pay a little more. Come on. A big issue that I struggle with is when there's not enough control over the situation in the game. Randomness can be fun in the right doses, but it's too easy for a game to get out of control to a point of being too hard for its own good. Examples, in general, just roll and move games with only one token you can move, like Monopoly and Frag. Heck, even when you have multiple tokens, like Pachisi and Sorry, there's still kind of a pain. Oh, and Backgammon too. You know, having every step of your movement randomly successful or otherwise. Hey, Firefly, gonna be seeing you quite a bit. And you know, having your ability to do anything at all made random. Age of Conan with its fate or destiny dice, the blue dice that determine what actions are available to players for a number of turns. and Apocalypse Chaos, which if you're playing with multiple players, there's the dice trading option, but still you're just rolling and hoping that you get what you need to do. And also, kind of hate to say it, but when there's too many miniatures, it can be a problem. Yeah, minis are cool and stuff, but they very quickly add to the cost of the game and its weight. A heavy board game will end up on a bottom shelf for safety. And if you have animals, you probably don't want things on a bottom shelf. I'm just saying. That's why I keep one thing in a plastic box. That said, this hasn't entirely stopped me from buying certain games. It just means I'm not buying a lot of games that use so many. I think the last big crap ton of miniatures game that I've put money into has been Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm I'm happy with what I have for it, and I'm probably not going to get anything else. I'm sure as hell not getting into minis games again after I get rid of the the Cav miniatures at some point because I'm not playing that. Anyway, as mentioned previously, it is entirely possible to do like the Court of the Dead's game with simpler components, though I'm sure it probably wouldn't have done as well. The minis are what make it awesome. Sometimes you gotta have those miniatures to sell the game to people because um, a lack of that quality stuff is gonna get noticed. Like imagine the Court of the Dead Mourner's Call with like little wooden meeple type people. Yeah, I don't think that'd fly at all. Nobody wants that. Yeah, on the flip side, a lack of quality components can get a game eviscerated and forgotten quickly because too little production is noticeable. Like the tiny tokens in Politica make that game a pain. Among other issues, which kind of sucks because I really wanted to like that game more. Um, Tom Clancy's Politica, based on a computer game based on a book. Um, Apparently, the tokens were supposed to be bigger, and somebody screwed up, and the tokens ended up smaller. And yeah, that did not help. The old style of cards being punched out from a frame will not fly these days. Thunder's Edge is the most recent example I have from my own collection. That's from 1999. For context, Magic has been going quite a while. There should be no excuse to not have decent quality cards with a game. For crying out loud, I also have to look into how Fantasy Flight was back then to see why they went with a punch frame cards. Speaking of Thunder's Edge, the thin hexes for the map with no back image, plus chits for the horses. I want to fix that game so much. I make little like cardboard or cardstock mecha for the chits, and uh, I just want to do so much for that game. There, there's also this issue with expansion creep. You'll see it in a lot of like big games, especially ones that are like Kickstarter and stuff. Um, it seems rare anymore that a game can just stand, without needing expansions later to flesh out the experience. But I do wish they dial it back a bit. Firefly got way too big, too quickly, for my own collection and willingness to keep sleeving the cards because that is a game that just loves the shit out of cards. I tell you what. Getting rid of second time because I decided it's worth having a second time. I swore I'd only get the Clockwork expansion in the alternate deck. It is very, very, very tempting to expand it back out again, but I really need to. I need to dial it back on my own. Something that annoys me for as rare as it is having mutually exclusive expansions. Revolution, the Steve Jackson game, um, it's got the Steve Jackson Games game. I think it's someone else. That one has both Anarchy and Palace expansions. They cannot be used together, which is unfortunate. But it's just the way the game works. There's also Cities of Splendor, which is a single expansion that contains mutually exclusive elements. Um, I can't imagine how crazy it would be to try to use them all anyway. But there's the cities module, which um, knocks out the nobles, which messes with anything that affects nobles, um, which is everything but strongholds. Strongholds, it allows for some card reservation, which I'm not sure how that would mix well with the Orient or the trade route expansion or modules. And then I'm not sure how the Orient and trade route modules themselves would mix with each other. But it might be for the better that each of those things stands alone. But it's still kind of annoying. Kind of. What feels like a real slap in the face sometimes is when they overwrite older designs. I don't really see it that much, but when I do, I have to ask why. StarCraft, even if it's low on my tier list, please watch my tier list video. It's still a game I think is pretty cool for what it is, with its combat system and all that. Finding it halfway utilized for Forbidden Stars with the combat system, hybridizing, cards and dice, which is a cardinal game design sin to me. You hear me, City of Remnants? Made me sad. I'll be going over that point here in a sec. But anyway, some games are just straight up plagiarism, and that is the worst. I believe there's been, somewhat recent ish problem with one game from Kickstarter. Pretty much plagiarized someone else's design without their using their system without their permission, company's permission, and I need to look at that and see if that ever got resolved with getting that pulled or whatever. But yeah, just try making original. Okay, it's kind of hard to make original stuff anymore, but try to at least be more creative with mechanics and how you use them in your designs rather than just straight up taking something wholesale. Double luck. Hey, since I just mentioned it, let's mention it again. Hybrid systems that use two completely different random result generators, such as cards plus dice, together towards making a result, are crazy. City of Remnants, with its dice based on the people you have in the location and around it, and cards from your hand based on what's still left after, you know, you know, after using some earlier in your turn. Clash of Cultures, where you just get, I believe, one die per figure in the combat, and then if you have tactics, I believe you can play one strategy card or one action card that has a strategy on the bottom that you can use. But that's not as bad. And then Forbidden Stars, have a hand of cards for some strategy, but dice rolls towards half or most of the final outcome. You might be able to build your hand, but it's the dice that give it that last edge. Excuse me. It's games can be random enough. Putting two random things together, it's gonna cause headaches. Trying to make things only as random as it needs to be to stay interesting is the challenge after all. Concern future-proofing app-driven games. Personally, I'd rather not have any game requiring anything more complex than a kitchen timer, like Fuse or Asteroids. But I do think it's cool that people have found a way to combine physical board games with digital systems. However, I wonder what happens when those systems, those apps, stop getting supported. No game company is invincible, and when those apps are unusable, how can the game be played? It seems like a lot of support is coming from the fans of the games themselves who can program, and I know programming is becoming more of a big thing. So there's always a lot of homebrew solutions to these problems of things just not having support anymore. So it's up to the players, and uh, if and you got to hope that there are enough players who care about that game to keep it going. I remember seeing XCOM the board game. And it was like, I need to have a smartphone. I don't even have my own computer. I'm using my mom's for the libraries. There's how the how the hell can I play this game if I don't have that stuff? It's not fair, man. But I've come to kind of halfway respect it in hindsight as being an interesting idea. But I still stand by um, my personal favorite automated play system coming from Gears of War and its stack, because I like to see someone take a Gears of War AI deck approach to a game like that and see if they can make it work. Yeah, speaking of XCOM and Gears of War, licenses are concerned. There are a lot of licensed board games, and some of them are actually really good. You know, Gears of War is up there pretty high, which is impressive. You know, um, and then Star Wars and Star Trek are pretty big too. But those licenses are temporary, and when they're lost, I'm left wondering what could have been. The World of Warcraft board game was supposed to have an expansion after the Burning Crusade. It got announced in the catalog, but then it never released. I was excited for it too. I was asking, local game store owner guy, "Hey, could you order me this? It's coming out, right? It's gonna be out. Huh? Please tell me it's coming. Come on. I want to expand my board game. Damn it. I'm happy with what I have, but I'd be cool with a little bit more. Please. Where is it?" The worst is with card games. The collectible kind of ended up in a weird limbo of not having any more cards to try out while still being playable. Card games um, need to have both solid systems and the cards actually play within them. I was reading somewhere like Fantasy Flight had the Kingdom Hearts card game license, and they printed out one card that relied on another card that they were going to print in the next expansion that never came out because they lost the license. Don't 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 design things to make that happen, because you're gonna regret it. Less of a concern is can I play it solo? I like being able to mess with board games at home and better understand them for playing and teaching the game to others. I also like solo challenges. Games like Call to Adventure and Great Western Trail feature ways to play the game solo and challenge yourself. I have some games that require other players due to trading, deception, and other secret things, which are a challenge for me to test out by myself because it's hard to predict what someone else might do in a situation where only they know who they are or what they have. I've got Shadowhunters and One Night Revolution, but I also have Diplomacy and Hunted, which are kind of brutal games. Um, it's kind of hard to think what someone might do unless it's the thing that they really should do. Uh, I don't think any of my own game designs are solo friendly, and figuring that out would be one hell of a challenge. Um, Designing like an AI opponent for Heart of Chaos, you know, for example, would require some thinking because that's that's probably the one game I'd have the best shot at doing it. Another concern that it's not as big of a concern to me, but still, games that are overly predictable. As much as too much randomness makes a game frustrating, no randomness in it, makes the game into a puzzle to be solved, which can be boring. I have chess and I have Go and I have shogi, and I think they're all cool, but I don't really play them. I'm not in a hurry to play them with anyone um, from the game store more than any other game where I can play with more players. But anyway, Concordia does a good thing with containing its randomness. The cards at a given stage, because there's like the stage 1 cards, the 2, the 3, the 4, um, and the 5. Or they're the same, but they come out in a random order. Resources are along similar lines being contained to certain areas, um, but it's always the same groups, but between them, it helps with the planning. But the one game I got rid of for being a puzzle to be solved more than a game was the first Choose Your Own Adventure series game, House of Danger, because once you know what cards to avoid, or what things to avoid, and what you need to have in order to accomplish the end of the game, that's what you know that's obviously what you're going to do the second time. Playing the game the first time was uh, was interesting, but then you hit that death and it's like, okay, I would know not to do this next time. So when I came back to that game the second time, it's like, okay, I know not to do this, but it's like, why would I play this game more than once I figured out exactly what I need to do? That's there. That's a question for me to answer at some point. But there are other games that can be predictable at times as well. But you know, a little bit of randomness can, when it's done right, can make it fun. All right. Thank you for watching and listening. Sorry for not having more pictures to work with, but it's all right. This marks the end of the game design chat as a series for this channel. I need to shut up about board games at some point and just try doing other creative stuff. Maybe do more of the 2 minute bits or whatever, or other chats or something. But it's just I love board games too much, and I care, and I want to see better things. Even when I can't afford to get into to board games much anymore, I'd rather I want to see board games keep on growing in a good way. But anyway, if you have any comments on tabletop game design or on the videos, please let me know down below in the comments. I'm just always looking for more feedback and more, more what's going through people's heads when it comes to looking at games and scrutinizing the designs and understanding what's good or what they find fun personally. Everyone's got their own ideas for things that are fun, and what one person enjoys, someone else might not enjoy as much. And some people are looking for details that others are just like, whatever. So, thank you once again. And this has been Pillar Nexus, the Ancient Gladiator. I'm looking forward to figuring out the next project I'm going to work on. But until then, see you later.